properties, the federal government through HUD is or I won't say incentivizing, but pushing people to buy said properties. And poorer people who are more likely than not to be the ones, or the working poor, working people to buy these homes are the ones who have the greatest risk, because number one, flood insurance is very, very expensive. And number two, as you just pointed out, John, a lot of them don't know of the enormous risk before they have signed on the dotted line. So that should not be happening. And so we do need more coordination across governments, and as both local, regional, state, and federal, all governments should be involved in this. And also to make sure the federal departments are communicating. For example, FEMA, for example, and HUD should have a very, very close relationship when it comes to flood zone.
Exactly. Oh, totally. And just think about the damage that can be done to you financially. It's going to be more difficult to eventually sell the home if that's what you're trying. And all of this is happening not just in like a great time to be a home buyer in the United States. It's devastating in a million other ways that we talk about. So people are desperate. And so if the home is in a flood area, maybe it's a bit cheaper. We need to be protecting people from potentially not just destroying their own finances, but the finances of future generations. You can wipe out all your wealth as a result of this. There's health consequences as well. And it's a reminder, by the way, that departments like HUD and transportation, sometimes they just throw people in there who don't necessarily know about this stuff, but it is critically important for hundreds of thousands, for millions of people, that these departments are well staffed by experts who understand and will engage with the actual issues under their purview. And this has been going on for years. I don't see any data here from before January 2017, but I have a hard time believing it started in January 2017. So while this was going on under Donald Trump, I don't see any reason to believe that it began under Donald Trump. But perhaps it can end under President Biden if people put pressure on the administration.
That is the promise and the problem, John. That is exactly it, and it should end. And let's talk about the effects that people have that you can't replace, pictures and other family heirlooms, that if those things are destroyed in flood, they'll never get those things back. And your point about wealth. Most Americans build their wealth through home ownership. And if they have offspring, they will pass that on to the next generation. That is it. So your biggest investment is also your biggest debt. And it is absolutely devastating. So no one should be preying on people in desperate situations, especially the federal government. So let's go and get this together. Promise and the problem, John. They can fix this right now. Let's do it.
100%. Before we close things out, I am going to give you a bit of homework. First of all, you'll encourage NPR to do more analyses like this by going to NPR and reading the details. There's a lot more information that we weren't able to get to. And then also, I vaguely remembered, so I Googled it. Back in 2017, John Oliver had a great episode on flooding and flood insurance and the damage it can do to homes, how it wipes out generational wealth and all that. So go back and watch that too. It's a serious issue we need to understand, among all the other things. I know some people think that as the oceans rise, you can just sell the home. That's what Ben Shapiro says. That's not actually how it works out in practice.
Ben.
Ben being Ben.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, on that note, that's gonna be all the time we have for this episode of the Damage Report. But I wanna thank Nina Turner so much. Thank you for joining us. It has been an absolute pleasure to break down politics with you.
Pleasure was all mine, John.
Thank you. Until next time, where can people follow your work? See what you're up to.
Yeah, go to @Nina Turner on Twitter, Nina Turner Ohio on the gram, and Nina Turner on Facebook.
Awesome, Nina. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you. You as well.
And for those of you at home, thank you for joining us for this episode. I have, I think, a little bit less than a minute. I'm gonna read just a couple of comments. Let's see, Lisa Dodson sent in a super chat saying, trust me, we in Arizona are pissed and we'll vote her out. I hope so. Jessica Long says, democracy doesn't die in the dark, it dies in the Senate. That's true, but with dark money. Let's see, Stickman Grit says, catapultism, eat the rich. Jesus. Okay, let's see. Jessica says, not to mention they sell very high flood insurance coverage in these areas. Yeah, as Nina pointed out, it's very expensive. Barrel Age Millennial says, instead of courage, cinema and others are there slowly selling more of America's exceptionalism to the highest bidder and for their own personal gain. That's true. Thank you to Brandy Lou and for Tandy B, both of which gave out 5 tier 1 subs. Thank you to both of you. Andy Joe subscribed for 6 months. Thank you. More books, please, for 4 months. I agree. I'd like more books. Thank you for being here, though. Thank you for everybody. I'm going to remind you, though, I am going to be heading out until next Tuesday. Until then, Francesca is going to be taking over. You got Big News Wednesday with Jayar Jackson coming up tomorrow. Brett is going to be taking over and throwing out the political garbage of the week on Friday. So a lot to look forward to. Please give them a warm welcome. I'm going to miss you guys while I'm gone, but I'm also very happy that I'm going to be leaving for a bit. With that said, until next time, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and I'll see you soon.
Welcome to Indisputable, you guys. I am not Dr. Rashad Richey, but I am Jayar Jackson. I'm here filling in for him. He's, as I pointed out to you guys on Twitter today, he handed me the keys to the Ferrari. I'm ready to drive it. You guys know how I like some speed. We got a gas-powered engine here. My co-pilot today, David Shuster. This joins me way from like far east, man. It's afternoon for you now, isn't it? Like
yeah, Jayar, I have a long record of wrecking Ferraris and nice fast cars, so we're gonna do our best, but keep me honest in some of these turns that are coming up. All right?
We'll try. You know, you need to be my navigator. Then we'll switch at the back and forth and make sure you drive the dangerous parts. But I definitely want to point that out. Number two, my Michigan friend here, we were discussing just a second ago before we came on how well his guys are doing there, and the representation just has to continue. Now, me being a good Trojan that I am, I will continue to represent despite our woes and our firings and things that keep happening in my program. But the football season is young.
For USC, for we will lose.
It's so hard. Like, it's not much to say. I mean, because we talk a lot, so we have to take it when we get it, you know? It's the way these things work. But anyway, it goes. We got to get to some good stories today. We got to get to specifically what's happening here in my state right now, and I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on it as well. Let's jump right into it. How about that? The California gubernatorial recall election is going on today, finally. I mean, it's been happening for weeks now. I mean, everyone got their ballots in the mail, but today is the day where we find out things that are happening. But there's been some changes that have gone on with the polls, and since then we've seen that the lead Republican in this, Larry Elder, isn't looking so good in the polls as what he once was. So it's not looking like he's gonna be able to overtake Gavin Newsom and complete this recall, but it is not over. I don't want people to think that they can just sit back and look at a couple of polls and figure that. But the fun part about this is maybe Larry Elder's campaign and his subordinates, people around him, they don't really believe that necessarily themselves. So they've been encouraging people to go on websites and talk about potential fraud that might happen in this election before the election ends. So I'm not sure where they're gonna find this fraud or actually the point of how fraud is definitely gonna happen. And look, Larry Elder's gonna lose and Gavin Newsom pulled off all of these tricks and dirty tactics that these political guys like to do. That is the idea, but let's go straight into the graphics here from NBC News. So Republican Larry Elder appealed on Monday, this yesterday, to his supporters to use an online forum to report fraud, which he claimed it had detected fraud in the results of the California recall election, which resulted in Governor Gavin Newsom being reinstated as governor. Again, this is yesterday before today's election. Statistical analyses used to detect fraud in elections held in third world nations, such as Russia, Venezuela, and Iran, those are scary places, right? Have detected fraud in California, resulting in Governor Gavin Newsom being reinstated as governor, is what the site reads. The primary analytical tool used was Benford's Law and could be readily reproduced, it went on to say. Now, one more piece of this before we get to Larry Elder talking about this. The site was registered anonymously in August. This is hours after NBC News contacted the Elder campaign Monday afternoon about the site. There was a disclaimer about his campaign having funded the site that was added. Again, it was added in August. NBC News reached out Monday afternoon to ask what's going on. And then they put a disclaimer about how the campaign had funded it. It's beginning to turn into looking like if Republicans can't win a race, a la their still leader of the party, Donald Trump, they're gonna just push for fraud. Now, before I get to some of your thoughts on this, Jacob Sobroff did ask Larry Elder, are you gonna accept the results of this election, win or lose? And we did hear that from Trump as well. So let's hear what Larry Elder had to say.
Again, whether or not you win or lose, will you accept the results of the election tomorrow?
I think we all ought to be looking at election integrity, no matter whether you're a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican. Let's all make sure that the election is a fair election. So let's all work together, no matter what the results are, to make sure that the results are valid and legitimate, and everybody who voted should have voted. Let's all do that together.
Is that a commitment to accept the results of the election tomorrow?
Let's all do that together. Let's all work together on both sides of the aisle to make sure that the election is a fair election.
Now, David, you've been doing this longer than I have. Was that an answer to the question?
Well, I was struck by how stupid an answer it was, because if he didn't want to commit, he could have said, look, as long as the election is clean, as long as there's no dirty tricks, of course I will accept the election results. That way you say, I'm not gonna say anything yet because we don't know how this election is gonna go. But for him to not just be able to go there and just sort of dodge the question was ridiculous. The other thing about it is the Larry Elder website is so bizarre. I mean, I don't know what Benson's law is, but I know that Shuster's law, and I assume it's Jayar's law as well, is that we don't have time machines yet. We can't go 36 hours into the future just yet. And so for him to put this stuff, this nonsense on his website that there's evidence of fraud even before the results are tabulated is absolutely insane. But what it is also it's Trumpism, right? That's the GOP playbook now. They cannot win on the issues. They cannot win on the candidates. So when it looks like they're going to lose, or on the possibility they're going to lose, they just cry foul and say, "No, this is dirty pool. This was fixed," and therefore they get their crazies out there and say, "How is it possible that a Republican could lose in California?" Well, I'll tell you how. Most Democrats, the state is mostly Democrats. What are you thinking?
It's exactly what they saw, and it's getting to the point now. It's not even getting to the point. We are at the point where I feel like the strategy isn't to appeal to voters. It isn't to talk about your agenda. It's not about saying what you're going to do to help the constituents of the state that you're trying to run. It's to be prepared to lose, which I think they could see that, as you point out, the number of Democrats in the state versus that. That's why it would be such a big deal. But also, just let's go and lose, and then we'll push the same talking point that apparently is working for Trump, which I don't know, maybe because I'm living in this liberal bastion, it doesn't seem like it's working. He keeps talking about the 2020 election, and Larry Elder did slip up once and say, "Oh yeah, Biden did win." That seemed to be his downfall.
Yeah, at a certain point, Republicans are going to have to come to grips, I guess, or maybe they won't, that they are wrong on the issue of abortion. They're wrong on the, and I'm not talking about, the morality of it. I'm just talking simply about the poll numbers. They're dead wrong in Texas on abortion rights. They are dead wrong in California on workers' rights. According to the polls, they are dead wrong about January 6th and the insurrection. They are dead wrong about vaccine mandates. They claim, "Oh no, we're opposed to vaccine mandates." Well, actually, most of the public supports vaccine mandates. So on issue after issue, they're on the wrong side. And yet, instead of coming to grips with this and maybe changing the Republican Party or adjusting their messaging or whatever it is, it's, "Oh no, this must be stolen from us." It's complete nonsense. And look, I just, I feel like this is the future, right? I feel like where this is every election we're going to be looking at now for the foreseeable future is going to go the same way.
It seems like the first step is to call for fraud, and the next step is to call for violence. I want to jump to this one quick quote really fast before we move on to the next story. So there was also another point from NBC News as well. It said the page for the website suggests voters may turn to the quote ammo box if they can't trust the ballot box. They say that in America there are 4 boxes of liberty: the soap box, the ballot box, the jury box, and the ammo box. This is what this website reads, as I pointed out. We will now have to fight the California jury box in the hopes that the final box, the one that most akin to Pandora's, remains closed. So they're gonna get all like poetic and talk about which box is that box and the third box and the fourth box. Either way it goes, the only box that sticks out to these types of people is the ammo box. And if more violence happens, as what happened on January 6th, this time with ammunition, are they gonna say, "I don't know how these supporters decided to do this. Nobody said anything about violence"?
Look, I think of the Jack in the Box, right? That's what the Republicans are now. They keep popping out. We just try to keep shining the lid on them, and they keep popping out with this crazy stuff. It's insanity. It's insanity. And we have a major political party in the United States that is absolutely insane. And whether you're a Democrat or Republican or whatever it is, if you're an American, that is bad for all of us.
Well, we don't have a Jack in the Box. We do have a Madison in the box, and he did pop out. Let's go to this next story. Madison Cawthorn, just last night, he attended a Henderson County, North Carolina, he's the representative of North Carolina, school board meeting to talk about some more of these mask mandates. And again, this does seem like another opportunity to jump on the talking points that happen a lot of times with their constituents, and then the angry ones at these school board meetings. But this representative wants to be one of those guys. Doesn't have a kid at the school, doesn't have a kid at all, but he does want to make sure he stands out as the next Trump. Again, these guys keep regenerating themselves as that. Let's listen to what he had to say at this meeting.
Tyrants thrive when freedom is sacrificed on the altar of safety. Unbridled executives yearn for a fearful populace because power is found in fear. I believe that King George III would be immensely proud of Governor Roy Cooper. He's running the state with an iron fist, liberty be damned. He has ripped away your power and your will. No executive should undermine the foundations of our local government, you all. This school board did the right thing by voting to stop Roy Cooper's mask mandates. But our tyrant governor decided he was going to trample on this board's decision, flex his political muscle, and run roughshod over the will of our local government, all of you sitting here. We are here to tell him no more. You are not the king. We are not your subjects. We, the people, will not bow to you. We will not accept your edicts. North Carolinians have had enough. I give you my word. I will work tirelessly to help elect patriots across this state who will put this self-appointed king back in his place. Once we put the governor in his place, it will finally be up to you to do the right thing for our students. Stop using my constituents' children as political pawns. Educate them, don't indoctrinate them. Stop forcing people to co-parent with the government. I urge you, do the right thing, regardless of the backlash.
Thank you, Mr. Cawthorn.
It's just because it's my nature. Did you notice the guys behind him? First of all,
look at that dumbass in front of us. Can you believe it? Oh, by the way, I have backgammon now. Whatever.
Was it Worm? What was the first game on the old Nokia's Worm? But as soon as he was wrapping up, he's like, "Oh, my phone away." Oh, shoot, I think they're looking at me now. So this is the thing. He went and he made his speech, this very pre-written speech to try and appeal to certain people. Of course, he's going straight for the governor because that's what we're talking about when it's a school board meeting. The governor, is he on the school board? Is going to make this decision? I do know who was on the school board. It was 7 of them, and 6-1 they voted against his. Not his edict. He's against the edicts, but he definitely wants to push for this. But 6-1, he was defeated. He also went to Polk County School meeting that night, and also he plans to go to Johnson County School Board meeting tonight to probably pull the same type of things. And right now he's 0 for 1. We'll see if this continues on. I'm not sure how the Polk County School Board went, but this is now the next plan. Like, hey, I saw that people are getting some attention when they're at school board meetings. I have an idea. Let's do that. I don't know how much this is really gonna work for him, or if this is what the constituents are looking for him to do.
Well, it's also, I mean, Republicans have long looked to give more authority, right, to local governments and local school boards and take it away from central authority like a state or federal government. So this sort of just flies in the face. I mean, if you say that the governor should be overriding your local school board, how can you possibly even be a conservative or a Republican? Well, of course it doesn't matter. Ideology doesn't matter for those Republicans. The only thing that matters is power. The one thing that I'm sort of relieved is, even though he was talking about King George III and all sorts of crazy stuff that this guy has absolutely no idea what he's talking about, at the very least, he's saying, well, the way to change things is to have an election. Of course, they'll claim fraud if a Democrat wins the election. But the point of the matter is, look, if you don't like what's happening on your school board, in your county, in your state, there are elections. Go vote, make a difference. And then maybe your guy or gal wins and you can change policies. But until then, too bad.
And that's the thing, again. Give us some agenda and not just the talking points. So Eric Gash, he's the 11th congressional district candidate going against Madison Cawthorn here, did have this to say. Mr. Cawthorn is the last person who should be coming in here telling us how to take care of our kids. He didn't show up in the last 18 months. And he repeatedly voted against relief for schools, and he spread misinformation about the deadly virus. It's just, it packages it together exactly the way this goes. How about some points about what we need to do? I'm not sure what Madison Cawthorn has said that needs to be done to get to us to end this pandemic, but he does want to point out he wants to expand this and open it up and be against a mask mandate in a school that I don't know. This is my speculation, that he hasn't looked too deeply into to see their statistics, their numbers, the issues that could be addressing them, maybe some staff that shortages that potentially came from COVID numbers, because these things definitely jumped up as we've seen. And then I think after Labor Day, we're gonna get a little bit more of that. This is a consistently flowing issue, but the message still remains the same. Opposition say the government is coming for you, and then there we got maybe a potential chance for another election coming through.
Yeah, look, you've got a kid, we've got a couple of kids. I hate these things. I hate the mask. I mean, it breaks my heart every time that I see my daughter and my son who's going to preschool have to put on a mask. I mean, because I think, oh my God, how are they gonna socialize? How are they gonna interact? Our son who's shy, he's not gonna talk at all. But the fact of the matter is, if you ask the kids just sort of roll with it. They're fine, they're okay. And so I think for us grown-ups who freak out over this stuff, look, we're all in this together. The sooner we can stamp this thing out, the sooner everybody can get vaccinated, we can get this under control, then the sooner these masks get thrown away. But as long as there are numbskulls out there who are making a big deal at these ridiculous school boards and saying, oh yeah, we gotta, we can't force the kids to wear masks, well then you're basically saying, okay, then we are gonna force our kids to have to endure this even longer. And to me, that's just unconscionable.
I think other people agree with you. And here's the thing, this is the surprising part about this as we go to this next story. Madison Cawthorn is still in this particular vein of thought, but I was a little surprised by this, as he has generated, or at least his antics have generated, a couple few Republican challengers potentially they're gonna primary him, as they see him being a little bit more ineffective and potentially weak as he goes into this next election, just because of the way he's going across the country. And then he is kind of going across the country, but now around the state, just looking for different ways to promote himself and not really talk about his constituents. Let's jump right in this from the Daily Boost. They did report that there are 4 new Republican challengers that are jumping up to get him, as I mentioned. And this even part of this recent hurricane and tropical storms that have hit them, he's kind of ignoring it. Let's go straight into this graphic. It wasn't until a few weeks ago after the storm that just hit, after Cawthorn had criticized President Biden over the withdrawal from Afghanistan, he called the Democratic governor of his state, again, as he mentioned in this last piece when he was at the school board meeting, a tyrant, warned his followers about authoritarian school boards, and he crowed that he would rather be hated by the mainstream media and the DC swamp if that means I'm loved by the patriotic Americans across this country. And so that's when Cawthorn began to communicate about the storms and the flooding and the mudslides and everything that had happened. He kind of gets off track for what he wants to focus on because he's too busy going for the big names, the Bidens, and then let's go for the governor of the state when talking about these things. But you got to talk about how we're going to recover. There was a storm that hit people. There's people who lost property, people who were devastated, potential lack of life, loss of life that happened here. But people noticed those types of things. So I think the Republican Party did notice this as well. So one more part of this, when Cawthorn did finally get around to tweeting about the storm and its damage, he chose to retweet some general government guidance about cleanup and to post pictures of himself handing out meals to first responders and speaking with constituents. This is where the weakness comes in. This is where some of these potential challengers are seeing some openings. Do you see some openings here? He still might win, but at least there's people that are thinking about challenging him now. That's a little unprecedented when it comes to Republicans.
I think you make a great point. It is somewhat unprecedented. And the other part about it is when I hear you talk about him, handing out masks to first responders, I'm thinking, well, wait a second, these masks are supposed to be disinfected to begin with. Now they're infected. Now the masks are not clean because you got this guy who doesn't believe in vaccinations or mask mandates or whatever, and his dirty little grubby hands all over these masks. If I'm one of these first responders, I'm like, no, I'll take one out of the bag, thank you.
Yeah, and this is the thing. I want to get some quotes from one of his challengers, Eric Batchelor. It's a fun name. It's one of those things that'll stick with you when you're trying to run for office. It's one of the pillars of it. You have to have a recognizable name. Anyway, Eric Batchelor, he's a retired US Army lieutenant colonel, and he's a current sheriff's deputy. Now, this is what he had to say about Cawthorn's approach and what he thinks he has an opening as far as taking over here. Being a representative is about being a representative to this district. It's not about flying around the country, raising national campaign dollars, and searching for the next photo op. It's about being here in this district. Again, you would think this would be a Democratic challenger coming for him. No. This is from one of their potential Republican challengers to primary him. So also, Broadley, who wrote the original article, he concedes that Cawthorn still has an odds-on favorite to win this. But when you start seeing little chips and people throwing a couple daggers at him, it's just not a good sign. Also, lastly, there's one GOP operative that told the Daily Beast that Trump, who won his district by 12 points in 20, who still polls there, and Cawthorn has also effectively cultivated that to support his base. His challengers don't have a real chance if Cawthorn stays on his current track and doesn't make any major mistakes. There's always a chance for major mistakes. Honestly, I think this is one of the major mistakes, is looking like you kind of don't care about your constituents. And you have a guy who's a lieutenant colonel and sheriff's deputy, and he's actually talking about the constituents. We'll see.
Jayar, you know politics well. You got it right on the money there. I mean, there are always the possibility of mistakes, and particularly if it looks like you don't care about the district, as you just pointed out. And the fact of the matter is, if you look so craven as Madison Cawthorn does, the fact that there are some Republicans who are saying, you know what, I might challenge this guy, that in and of itself is a pretty dramatic story and something worth watching.
Are you gonna watch it? I'm gonna watch
it. The Republican civil war that's going on is fascinating.
We're gonna find out if he actually listens to what's happening or sees it and then changes up his approach, and maybe that'll save him to a degree. But actually, we'll get to more of the way that they're screwing things up for themselves in a minute. But after this break, we're gonna take a quick break here, and we're gonna come back with a lot of these types of subjects I don't get to talk about much until I come on Indisputable. We have a couple of Karens and Kens to talk about issues that happen within our nation that just can't be ignored. We'll be right back with more after this.
Well, the Young Turks, the Friday show is gonna be awesome. We're gonna help us over here. Drop it. We became the first ever daily online web television show. No, the Constitution is the very core of America. The fact that we don't spy on American citizens, that we get a warrant, that we go to a judge, that we have a procedure, that we have due process, that is America.
On top of it, they go, why don't they just stay at their own schools? You gotta realize something. These schools suck. They want people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. You ain't got no straps, you ain't got no boots.
He lit these fires in trash bins all around town out of frustration.
99th most viewed channel today on YouTube.
The Shorties Award. Best Web Host. We passed 1 billion views. Voice Award winner, News and Information Channel. The Young Turks. Oh, another Webby.
The Young Turks.
Can I curse? Yeah! For those of you watching on the live stream, yes, we have adopted a pet iguana that showed up at our door.
Haunted version in the dark with our silhouettes.
Now let's get to the best line of the debate. And it was definitely the one against Williams.
I told you we were coming.
When you talk about it, when it becomes a problem. Our lack of gun control is a problem.
Nonsense BS story is hurting that cause, and they need to wake up and recognize that they are being had by these people.
Biggest gang in America. Question is, how do we make sure that we blame the person who is dead? What kind of democracy is that?
We should never forget that the most powerful people in the world exploited the greatest tragedy in American history to go to war in a country that had a lot of oil.
Rolling thunder. That's what this show is.
Never in my life did I think I would like to see a dictator. But if there's going to be one, I want it to be Trump.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
Where's the line? We've crossed every line you can imagine.
We are a socialist country. It's socialism for the rich.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
You don't have to know the truth, just believe what they tell you.
There is no bounds to their monstrous hypocrisy. Tick-tock. I think we're gonna win the Senate in 2020. And I think we're gonna have the House, and I think we're gonna have the presidency. Tick-tock.
And in 2020, we're going to clean your clock. And we're gonna run you out of town. And we're gonna have an actual democracy in this country.
November of 2020 could also be potentially the greatest day of our lives. Let us whisper of a dream.
Back to back that I like. Say hi to the camera.
I don't like this.
And we're back. And we're back on Undisputable. Jayar Jackson and David Shuster, Michigan alum, whose team only has one more win than mine. Let's just keep it real. Let's not act like this is out of control or anything. Okay, just calm down. Glad to see you here, David. Good stuff. We do have a couple of notes to talk about, programming notes. First of all, specifically with Indisputable, if you go on Shop TYT, the merch release has happened. You guys are asking for it, now you've got it. We're a response organization here. You guys asked for something, here it is. You can represent Indisputable wherever you go. There's 2 new t-shirts available now. You can check out the I Wish a Karen Would, and They Won't Stop, I Won't Stop. This is all at shoptyt.com. Check out those shirts, multiple colors. Oh, look, Rashad's face is right there in front of you. You can represent wherever you go. Let them know what it's about. And also another point of this, as far as Indisputable today, there is gonna be a replay of a bullpen session that Rashad did take part in. I'm not big on arguing with folks that aren't gonna listen to me. So they didn't wanna have me do that day, because I'd probably be like, okay, fine, yeah, leave, bye. That's just me. So Rashad is the professional when it comes to that point. So check it out again for the non-linear audience. Just in about 30-35 minutes, we'll get to that point as well. More programming notes here. The conversation. Watch the conversation today. It's at 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific, tyt.com/live. It is before the Young Turks show. Cenk is gonna speak with Kenny Klippenstein about his latest reporting on Afghanistan. As we know, Kenny Clips used to be part of the TYT, and now he's taken his talents everywhere else, and we love the things that he still continues to do. So you can catch up with Ken Klippenstein with Cenk just before the Young Turks today. Also, subscribe and watch all these interviews at youtube.com/TYT Conversation. Lastly, today, deep dive. After Indisputable today is an all new deep dive with Jordan Ewell. All these episodes, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific on twitch.tv/TYT. Yes, we are everywhere. Twitch, YouTube. You can, if you look for us, you're gonna find us. Right now, I'm looking for a couple of member comments. Kelly O'Hara said, "We, the Truth Squad." Is this something that happens at Indisputable? Maybe I should be on the Truth Squad more often. We, the Truth Squad, bid welcome and hello to our friend Jayar, a super fine fellow. You know, if you're gonna say my name in a tweet, I'm gonna read it. Oh, I'm sorry, this is a member comment. "The doc is away, but it's still a great party. It's a truth barbecue. Come on, eat hearty, even with Michigan guys." John Bogino says, "What kind of weirdo goes to a school board meeting when he doesn't have kids?" This is again talking about Madison Cawthorn down in North Carolina, who decides to jump into a school board meeting. That reminds me a little bit, as you mentioned earlier, David, you've got kids, I've got one. And I remember I saw a sign before I had kids at a playground, because I lived right across the street from a park. And it said, it was basically like, adults that don't have a child can't be here. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this sign is up, and I love it. It's things like that. Like, why would you go to a school board meeting just to complain about something that doesn't affect your kid? Because you don't have one.
I mean, look, the pedophile analogy may somehow fit here. I mean, if we start seeing Madison Cawthorn show up at school playgrounds to talk about masks or something, then we're really in trouble. But no, as far as we know, he's not a pedophile. He's just annoying.
We'll see how soon he has to defend some of those folks that get accused of these crimes, but we'll see. We'll go to some YouTube super chats. Chris Nesbitt, as I said, hey, you guys, I was not lying to you when I said, mention me, you're getting red. Jayar is the boss, and that's indisputable. Glad to see you, Mr. Jackson. Chris Nesbitt, good to see you too. Thank you for the super chat. The Progressive Stoner Queen as well, thank you for the super chat. Grandma Sunshine Dragon. Oh, we got crossover. You know the dragons are from the Damage Report with John on Wednesdays. Well, that's when I'm there at least. I mean, that's the only day I know about Wednesdays. Grandma Sunshine Dragon says, what, Jayar Jackson, who? Just the best damn co-host / host for the best damn news work. Hi, sweeties. So that includes you now. Look at this. You get a sweeties and everything when you come onto the show here, Dave.
I'm so glad my mom is writing to you, Jayar. That's awesome.
It's lovely. And Kenny from Philly, thank you. Also, even Dr. Richie knows it's male Karen. It's no kin talk. Oh, okay, that's the way it works here. I'm still getting warmed up. The Ferrari's a little bit quick. You got to catch it between the second and third gears. You know, it kind of hops there. I'll make sure the clutch is smooth on that next one. Let's go smooth. How about we go to that next story, you guys?
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday?
I feel free. Back off! I'm going to tell them there's an African American man threatening my life.
Why is it okay to hit my vehicle to get me to move? How is that okay? There's a whole street. You don't have to park right here. That's not on me. I don't have to move, and you don't get to hit me. That's great, but I'm not obligated to move. You don't know why I'm waiting here.
Nobody's obligated to do a nice thing.
And no one's obligated to hit my car because I won't move out of your way.
Are you punishing him for touching your car?
He hit my vehicle, sir. That's not me punishing anybody. In what universe is that an acceptable response? You just shove people out of your way when you're waiting in line and they don't move?
We're waiting for you to move.
Why? There's other places to park. You don't know why I'm parked here.
What harm will it do if you move your car too far?
That's not the point.
What is the point?
There's other places to park. You do not get to hit my vehicle with your car because, ma'am, you moved me twice. I have a dash cam. I have it recording back here. I saw you hit my car. I felt my vehicle. I'm fully. Because you hit my car.
Did anything happen to your car?
That's not the point. In what universe is it acceptable to play bumper cars with real vehicles? Yes, I'm the unreasonable one.
Day, you know?
I will. Thank you for hitting my car.
You know, maybe take some pictures.
This is all on camera, just so you know.
Just another parking dispute, and I will get the terminology right. We now have a male Karen that jumps up, and there's a bit of a bump there. That was recorded by this TikToker, Shelby Gale, also known as you saw there as Juicy Booty. Did report that and post that online. Now, you might be slightly surprised by my response to this. I'm a little mad at everyone in this situation. I gotta keep it real. We live in a big city where parking is definitely hard to come by. And sometimes people need to squeeze into a spot. And again, this is in Tacoma, Washington, so it's a lot different than here. I'm going off of my approach. People have bumped me before. People have opened a car door into my car before and left a little blue mark because the guy's car was blue. Things like this have happened. And there was a time I was up in New York, we're working for doing some things with Current TV, and we had to do some, I was walking the city because I was like, why does everybody walk here in August? It sucks. Either way it goes, I did notice people have these bumper covers, like bumper buddies, I think they're called, as a brand for them.
Yeah.
If you don't like someone touching your bumper, which I think it was a bit of an over dramatization on the "you hit my car" bumper cars. It was a bit of a touch. Now, if his intention was to move you, which it seemed like, now he's a bad guy too. We got I don't know, man. I love cars. I love keeping my car pristine. But if someone touches it, I'm a little less likely to be like, yeah, God, I destroy it. It just seems like it's a bit overblown to me. I don't know.
Well, look, I'm with you on the tap. Look, we've all sort of been there. We've either been tapped or we've tried to see, okay, do I have a couple more inches? Clearly, I just hit the car. I don't. It wasn't intentional. But to me, the big problem with this particular guy, never mind the sunglasses, was the 1980s want their blue jeans back. I don't know if male Karens are entitled to have mom jeans, but clearly that's what was going on with this guy. So I wouldn't trust anything that this guy was doing, much less drive a car. But that's a whole other issue.
Yeah, well, and also, yeah, he wanted to make sure you couldn't. I don't know if the dark sunglasses came on once the confrontation happened, or maybe it was keeping him from seeing what he was doing. But it was described. He did say that he was looking not to take her spot. That's a whole different thing, because there's other folks. Oh man, I got parking war stories, bro. There's other stories where sometimes someone will. I've seen people literally grab an orange cone, put it in the parking spot because they're waiting for their friend that's coming 5-10 minutes from now. Hey, this isn't event security. You're not able to corral parking spaces because your buddy didn't make it here yet. So people do things like that. Some people stand in parking spaces. The worst, which I would hope that this TikToker didn't do, was parking between two spaces, because people just don't know spatial relations here. Oh man, I could talk about this all day. So they said, this is also a point, according to the video description, Gail had been sitting in her car parked when the silver car decided to hit her to make sure that he gets some space for parking. So it wasn't to take her spot. And if she has to go, she'd sit there another 15 minutes, fine. But it looked like he didn't have much space to get into the spot. So he's like, hey, can you move up a little bit here? And if that's the case, man, I'm back on blue jeans side.
Team blue jeans, Jayar, who knew? All right, I'm with you. I'm just credit to whoever was filming this and thought, okay, this might go somewhere, so I better get my phone out and start recording.
Yeah, and it's always gonna be fun. I mean, conversations happen like this so much, and now we just get to see it. I guarantee you, in LA right now, this same conversation is happening about 150 times down the street. It just is. So it's life. Let's go for a double dip.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday?
I feel free! Back off! I'm gonna tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
This is disgusting. Disgusting. You're on camera. I would leave now before I call the police. Yeah. I will call the police if you don't leave. No, you are not permitted to grab my phone. You're not permitted to grab his hat. Yeah. I don't know where this behavior is coming from. And just let him be. Just let him be. Show his uniform. Show his uniform. Let him be. Show his uniform. You disgrace the US. You disgrace the USA. You put me on it. You put me on it. You put me on the freaking. Put me on. Put me on.
Hey Williams, can you give me Chief's number? What's Chief?
That's not a uniform.
Towers.
In case you thought this Karen was concerned about the establishment having someone out of uniform as they worked, it wasn't that uniform she was talking about. In fact, she was talking about this particular soldiers, this Navy sailor's actual issued uniform that he was wearing while he's out minding his business. As you saw at the beginning of that, also she slapped him, and apparently her husband is in the military. He's an Army soldier, so thinks she has some level of authority to talk to someone else and even assault him because of a uniform that he's wearing, which, as we're gonna find out in a second, she was completely mistaken about. So she called him a fake soldier because of this particular uniform he's wearing. Let's take a picture of this really fast. He's wearing a uniform called a Navy working uniform, also known as the NWU Type 3. So you see it's a green camel type of mix here. And of course, all this I do not know, but one of our excellent producers, Jordan, he is a veteran. He does know about these things. So he schooled me up on this really fast. This is what they wear when they're out working in the field, but then also not on like a leave type of thing. So when they're off base, but then they're not on liberty are the terms that my citizen ass doesn't understand. But this is what he was wearing that she didn't like. So it didn't look like something she was familiar with. So therefore you go to slapping and talking about how your husband is this and your husband is that. I'm not from a military family. I don't know if this is the approach that all military families have, that you have to project your pride, have pride in your family and what they do. But I just don't understand that then attacking someone else. Man, what if he's going to a party, he's wearing some random uniform? Like, I've seen Army surplus stores that sell old uniforms, and I was looking for it for Halloween once. Who cares? What is he doing to you? And again, maybe Army families have better grasp on this than me. What is he doing to you? Because he's wearing a uniform that, first of all, you don't understand, and number two, just because it doesn't match up with what you're looking to have him wear.
It looks like Jayar, I mean, what, she's at maybe some burger joint that maybe she got, I don't know, mayonnaise on her burger instead of ketchup or something. I mean, I'm sort of curious, why was she in such a bad mood to begin with? I mean, and then, okay, fine, you don't like the guy's uniform, maybe his medals are upside down or his shoes are not shined. That's strange to actually slap somebody over that. I mean, you could say, hey, don't you have more pride in your own uniform? But to actually hit somebody is really weird.
Is there something else that's supposed to happen here? I always wonder, every move you make that's towards another person. I mean, I was just talking about this yesterday to one of the parents of one of the kids I'm coaching with baseball now. When you're meeting someone, I even have the whole like, oh, are you on the handshake thing still? Because we got the COVID life we've got now. So if you're worried, you gotta worry that much just about interactions with anyone. I can't fathom an approach to someone that I don't know who's wearing a uniform, and because I don't agree with it, my next step is to slap them and say you're a fake soldier. What is that? What are you looking for the response to be? What is the end conclusion here? What's the idea?
Yeah, I mean, there are people where I live who wear Red Sox uniforms. I hate that, drives me crazy. But I'm not gonna go up and slap them.
Are you sure? I mean, that's actually more likely. That's the one that just may happen. Maybe Michigan State jerseys, Ohio State.
Except they don't know how to put on their uniforms at Michigan State or Ohio State. It's just how they. But anyway, we forgive them.
Oh man, I'm gonna get you going on this for real. We're gonna go through anybody in the Big Ten to make sure that you have an opportunity to talk about them. We're gonna come back with Iowa next, maybe a little bit of Wisconsin, Iowa. You guys are up next. After this break, we're gonna bring me, David Shuster, back to talk a little bit more about these insane stories of the day.
We are on to something that is going to be amazing, but what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you, that say no corporate backed money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats. We're gonna fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free healthcare for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single payer healthcare, debt-free college, and we are gonna get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're gonna do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's gonna stop with us. It's gonna stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Just Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a penny.
Absolutely not.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I should have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
Did you know that more than 20% of the world's oxygen comes from the Amazon? Why? Because of trees. I know what you're thinking. Of course! So what do we want to do? We want to plant more trees so we can save the climate. It's quite literal. So that's what leads to our new partner, Plant Your Change. Love it. It's so easy. What they do is you take the credit or debit cards you already have and you plug it into the system. And if you so choose, you get to round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and they plant a tree for you, okay? Now you could also choose if you wanna do it on only certain kinds of purchases or only so often, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But literally every cent makes a difference here. It's Plant Your Change. And if you wanna know more information, just go to tyt.com/trees. Let's go save the planet together.
Now, top. No. No. No.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet, because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet.
Back on Indisputable, Jayar Jackson, David Shuster. I feel like I've been yelling. I feel like the energy's been a little bit higher, you know what I'm saying? But I mean, look, Eric the Red apparently tends to like it. He says Jayar's style of reading poetry is way more jazzy than the Good Doctors. Oh my God, none of this blasphemy. Listen, I got the Ferrari. I don't want him to never give it back again. He's gonna be like, I heard you guys are speeding. I heard you making dangerous turns. I don't want the Good Doctor to revoke my keys. So let's chill with the comparisons, but I do appreciate it. Let's keep it real. Secondly, from Jamba Gino, that's a great helmet in the background, David. Go Wolverines. So wait a second, where's this helmet? Let me look closer for your shot.
Keep it wider.
Oh, there it is.
See right there? Yeah, it's got the winged helmet back there.
It's hidden a little bit. I think you're still curious about whether you're gonna bring it out.
Pants. Probably a little bit more than your viewers want to know about. I'll go get it. Hold on.
The Wolverine. Oh God. Yeah, you got to display it more. I feel like you're not fully like invested in your team right now.
See, and it's not. By the way, it's not a real helmet. I did not play. I just sat in the and screamed a lot.
2-0. I say keep hiding it till you guys get some more wins. Anyways, the next TYT report, I like that title. I had a Karen do this while I was in the Army, in my Army uniform. She didn't slap me, but she did berate me for being a little overweight. So wait, I'm sure I know we can't have a back and forth, but it sounds like, were you wearing another one of these? I guess it's kind of an alternate style uniform that people don't recognize. I don't know, but I'm still not sure why people have this thought process of thinking they can go up and hit someone. I don't care what you think is happening. Which then goes to Mickey C, the silver hair dragon, said, LMAO Jayar, wondering what the Karen was thinking at the end game would be. Thinking ahead? Not at all, it's not gonna happen. So I guess, yeah, I guess I assume people think before they do things, especially things when you're gonna start a fight. I don't know, there's a level of entitlement. You just think, I'm gonna assault, there's gonna be no response. It's probably gonna be a serious response. This is a member of our armed forces that you're attacking. I feel like there's probably some kind of a law against that. I don't know. The road rage Karen, the road rage male Karen goes infinity to park, revoke the license. That's a haiku for us there, David, that they said. That's from Peter Hamby. Thank you for the super chat. Captain Pollywalk Vanderbeef says Denim Dan Karen. I like it as well. David Morris. So Jayar actually goes too hard for the bullpen. Damn, I don't know. I guess it depends on who's there, but again, it's just more, I don't need to waste my energy and time on people because I maybe get a little too invested and don't know how to just shed them of all that negative energy. The good doctor's better at that than I am. And Walking on My Grave says, why is he dressed like a Dale Earnhardt wannabe? Well, he's driving.
Brutal.
Let's see, from Twitch, Jayar, multiple exclamation points. Love you, brother. Keep fighting the good fight. That's from Zevis X on Twitch. We love our Twitch audience as well. As we talked about, Jordan Yule is gonna be doing his deep dive on there after the show here today. The Twitch audience is awesome. Let's jump into this. This is gonna be fun, you guys. We brought on David specifically so he can talk about Nicki Minaj. We have to deliver Nicki Minaj. Rapping Nicki Minaj is facing a bunch of criticism about her tweets. First, it talks about the side effects of COVID. After, she talks about how much she's gonna be doing more research on the potential side effects of the vaccine itself. So here's some of those tweets. She says, they want you to get vaccinated for the Met. For those who don't know, that's this big gala in New York that just happened. Was that yesterday? For the Met. If I get vaccinated, it won't be for the Met. It'll be once I feel I've done enough research. Hey, so far this sounds completely reasonable to me. It makes sense. I'm working on that now. Oh, great. In the meantime, my loves, be safe. I still agree. Wear the mask with 2 strings that grips your head and face, not that loose one. Prayers up, big hearts. Hey, Nicki, I love it, man. This is a responsible thing. People who are still have some issues about the vaccine, I'm actually okay with that too, as long as you go ahead and look into your concerns and try to figure out what you want to do before you maybe do something irresponsible. As she says, be safe, wear the masks. Excellent. That was at 2:21 PM on September 13th. At 2:44 PM, same day, Nicki is back. My cousin in Trinidad won't get the vaccine because his friend got it and became impotent. His testicles became swollen. His friend was weeks away from getting married. Now the girl called off the wedding. So just pray on it and make sure you're comfortable with your decision, not bullied. So we go from do your research. I'm not going to the Met if I have to be vaccinated first. Stay safe, wear the mask, 2 straps, do it all. Don't put that loose one on. Be safe, my friends. So my cousin just, the research went for like 23 minutes and long enough for her to get a call from her cousin in Trinidad. It was like, the balls then got too big and now the wedding has been called off. If you don't want this to happen to you, this is a cautionary tale. Before we jump, David, before you go in, because you might steal my one point that I really want to make. So I'm gonna steal it back from you. How many women just call off weddings when your fiance has a medical issue with his testicles that have been enlarged? This is a brutal, brutal woman, Jesus.
I mean, we are talking Trinidad here. And I have to say, I know that I trust my cousin's friend in Trinidad over any scientific research in the United States. By the way, you know what's also difficult in terms of your wedding night, in terms of following through on the act that you're all sort of expected to do? when you're on a ventilator, when you're intubated. It's not the easiest thing to sort of get some blood flow down, where we're talking about. And by the way, if you want to talk about, having some issues, there are medical studies, research, and maybe they can look this up in Trinidad, that ivermectin, that horse dewormer drug a lot of people have taken, that actually does change modalities of sperm count. So they actually have found scientifically that if you're taking ivermectin, you will have some problems reproducing. I'm just saying. So, but maybe Nicki at a certain point, she'll look all this up, or she'll run it by her cousin in Trinidad and we'll all be good.
Well, this did not end there. You're not the only one who saw this curiously, or even potentially supported, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who said, that's right. It enlarged ball sacks. We can't have this happen. So Tucker Carlson did respond, but he was totally on Team Nicki. Let's see what he had to say.
She said that her cousin in Trinidad, quote, won't get the vaccine because his friend got it and became impotent. His testicles became swollen. His friend was weeks away from getting married. Now that girl called off the wedding. So just pray on it and make sure you're comfortable with your decision, not bullied. Which seems sensible.
Well, I mean, it actually is sensible, Jayar, if you consider that, the Trumpsters sort of grew out of the original teabaggers. And teabagging can be a little more complicated depending on how things go. So I'm just saying.
I mean, if it's enlarged, then it's definitely gonna be a problem. But still, so I just love that Tucker Carlson's response to that whole thing seems reasonable. That's it, right? He must have said more. I got to find out. Either way it goes. So we have one side. Indisputable is not a one-sided show. We got Tucker Carlson's take. Let's listen to what Joy Reid from MSNBC had to say about Nicki Minaj.
And people like Nicki Minaj, I have to say this. You have a platform, sister, that is 22 million followers. Okay, I have 2 million followers. You have 22 million followers on Twitter. For you to use your platform to encourage our community to not protect themselves and save their lives, my God, sister, you could do better than that. You got that platform. It's a blessing. It's a blessing that you got that people listen to you, and they listen to you more than they listen to me. For you to use your platform to put people in the position of dying from a disease they don't have to die from. Oh my God, as a fan, as a hip hop fan, as somebody who was your fan, I'm so sad that you did that. So sad that you did that, sister.
She's not very happy with this response, with at least Nicki Minaj's tweets, because she feels it's affecting her fans, which this also crosses with what Brian Kilmeade said a couple days ago, because he said, well, how come Joe Biden with his vaccine mandates, how come he doesn't tell African Americans to get the vaccine because the numbers there are lagging? And I think there's this thought that Nicki Minaj is only speaking to black folks, or that Joe Biden only won because black folks voted for him. It's a big part of it, but he wasn't talking about specific groups as far as racially based. He was talking about, hey, people who haven't been vaccinated, get vaccinated. The unvaccinated, the thing is the problem that's happening right now. So you have a disagreement with that. It's just we're bringing it to being like black folks only listen to Nicki Minaj. I feel like it minimizes the thought process that many black Americans have. They're getting their information sources from many places, even if it is wrong sometimes. It's not necessarily listening to just Nicki Minaj or any other artist. I don't know, I get where she's going. I was a little cringed on that part.
I'm right there with you, Jayar. I think Joy Reid gives Nicki Minaj far too much credit and far too much stature. And look, there are a lot of people who have tens of millions of followers who say a lot of nutty things. It doesn't mean that a particular race, a particular ethnic group, a particular gender, anybody is gonna necessarily do exactly what a Nicki Minaj says. And I think that people get a lot of information from a lot of different places. And oh, by the way, I think most people would look at the Nicki Minaj tweet and say, you know what, there is a very reasonable solution here. And that is, you just talk down there and say, hey, Bill Gates, knock it off. And then, it automatically, you communicate with Bill Gates through that transistor that was in the vaccine, and it stops.
Sorry. I forgot Bill Gates was a part of this. There's so many of these different angles that I always forget now that happened. But anyway, Nicki Minaj was not happy either with Joy Reid's response, but it wasn't the way that we're thinking. She did tweet in response, lastly, this is what happens when you're so thirsty to down another black woman by the request of the white man that you didn't bother to read all my tweets. My God, sister, do better. Imagine getting your dumbass on TV a minute after a tweet to spread a false narrative about a black woman. Nicki Minaj is not happy with Joy Reid's response. I'm not sure if she's responded yet to Tucker Carlson and his support for her tweets, but I'm sure she'll get around to that as well. So the fight continues. This is what happens every day in America. This is why some people are unvaccinated, or maybe even if they are, if they aren't and they haven't really fully deciphered it, there's just so many different streams of information, whether right, wrong, or indifferent. This is what we've got. Let's wrap this up really fast. David, how about that? Let's run through this last story. So on Saturday in DC, there's a bunch of MAGA folks that are gonna be trying to pull off this next rally that's gonna honor those folks from January 6th who ran up in the Capitol and tried to take it over and end the election or whatever the hell it is they thought they were gonna be doing. And you have plenty of elected officials, Republicans and conservative pundits, everybody telling them, hey, September 18th, get out there and rally, go for the justice for the J6 because they're political prisoners. We talked about Madison Cawthorn earlier in the show today. He's one of those big voices. Are any of them gonna show up is the next question though. Let's jump right into this from Politico. The minority leader, Kevin McCarthy, for Republicans there, told reporters on Monday that out of his Republican conference, he doesn't think anyone is going to attend this rally. Also, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell did not, he's the minority leader. Mitch McConnell did not respond to a question about whether leaders should be encouraging other rank and file members not to attend as he's headed to a briefing on the rally. So he's headed to talk about a briefing on it. These are the type of things that I've seen this before from Mitch McConnell, and this is what leaders of these parties a lot of times do. It's not just a Republican thing. Instead of going and saying like, hey, you guys, don't do this, it's gonna look so bad, you kind of say it in the open. I don't think anyone's gonna show up. I mean, I haven't heard anyone talking about showing up, and it's the not silent way, but it's the hidden way to be like, listen, you guys, you better not show up because this is a disaster situation, and we're trying to hurry up and formulate our plan for the midterms, and this is not helping us. All these criminals running up there, and potentially the next violent action to happen. You don't want your faces there.
You know who I do hope shows up, Jayar, and that is I hope the Capitol Police and the Army, and they show up with tanks and howitzers and even like, I don't know, like a dragon-filled moat that they build around the Capitol. And if anybody steps even close, I think they'd have just opened fire. We all know if this had been on January 6th, if this had been Black Lives Matter that was protesting, a lot of people would have been killed. And we all know that if it was Black Lives Matter that was trying another rally 8-9 months later, there would be all hell to pay. Why are we giving so much leg room to this group of white knuckleheads, these conservatives? It's totally about white privilege. And I hope that at some point the police and everybody will say, okay, we're gonna knock off this nonsense. We're gonna treat you just the way we treat everybody else.
Well, let's not forget, it started as Antifa, then it was Trump supporters, then it was some Trump supporters, then it was only the dumb Trump supporters, then they're political prisoners. The narrative keeps shifting of who these folks are. Why are you gonna have a September 18th rally for the jailed people if they're all Antifa? I thought you were against Antifa. This is a problem.
Yeah.
So the normal people like Paul Gosar and Gates and all, they're not even showing up either. It's just the way it's gonna be. You say the things, you get people riled up, and then you sit back and watch. This is what we're gonna look for on September 18th. Hopefully it doesn't get bad. Speaking of bad, today's show was excellent though. Thank you, David Shuster, for showing up with us and being here with us. You're Michigan Wolverines. I am rooting for them because it appears our season might not go as planned. So I mean, I might as well go for number 2.
I don't know, Jayar, we ought to meet in the Rose Bowl. I think Michigan beats Northern Illinois on September 18th. USC beats whoever they're gonna beat. And then we just run through the season, run through the table, and then we meet out in LA January 1st.
Hey, if we're in the Rose Bowl together, I'm willing to put a $200 bet down right now that we're gonna lose.
I'm willing to bet Michigan doesn't make it.
Thank you for being here, David. We will catch you all next time. Thank you for the keys to the Ferrari there, doctor, the good doctor. I promise I'll back it into the spot. No scratches at all, nobody's gonna bump it. No male Karens are hitting me today. Until next time, thank you for joining us on Indisputable.
So a lot of progressive office holders are doing something fun. I like fun. They're doing the last 2 years in 2 minutes. Okay, we're gonna try it here. First, I wanna let you guys know about the years before that. Hey, remember we started the Just Democrats here on the Young Turks. It was officially launched on our air, basically by you guys. And then we featured AOC, we featured Cori Bush, and Ro Khanna became the first ever Just Democrat incumbent, all on the Young Turks. Now, the last 2 years have been a spectacular follow-up to that. So let's put the 2 minutes on the clock and do this. Young Turks got to start back in 2002, and I think we've been an important part of the progressive movement ever since. What we mainly do is amplify the progressive voice and candidates out there, and I think we've done a pretty good job. Right now, we're currently #1 most engaged news politics network online, beating CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, all of them. We're #1 in total minutes watched. That means not only the number of people watching, but how long they watch. We just crossed 20 million followers and 500 million monthly views. Now, why? That's because actually the country's progressive. It's 2/3 progressive, and you guys have allowed us to be your voice, and we're incredibly thankful for that. So what did we do with that voice? Well, let's look at 2019. We went all over the country talking to you guys and the candidates. So we were in Miami, we were in Detroit, we were in Houston, and we were in Iowa. In fact, we were all over Iowa. You guys were all over Iowa, and all of the candidates saw you guys. We had wonderful people speaking, like the one and only Nina Turner at our rallies. Bernie Sanders stopped by, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren. We interviewed almost everyone on the campaign trail, with the exception of Biden and Buttigieg. And we held them accountable. We even did a progressive economic pledge, and so many wonderful people signed on to that. Bernie Sanders, Warren, Marianne Williamson, AOC, the entire squad, Justice Democrats, and so many others. Now, on top of all that, we started a show called The Conversation, where we featured so many progressive thinkers, writers, and candidates. And one of the candidates we featured in 2019 was Jamal Bowman. Here comes Jamal Bowman. Then we had an amazing 2020. We hired a climate reporter. Damage Report passed 500,000 subscribers. Young Turks passed 5 million subscribers. We're getting the message out to more and more people. Bernie Sanders comes on in the heat of the primary. He comes on after the election to say what we're going to do for the future. And then Marie Newman wins. Jamal Bowman wins. Cori Bush wins. And then just when you thought it couldn't get any better, here comes Nina Turner. Hello, somebody. And she's running for Congress, and she comes on the Young Turks first. On election week, we had nearly 2 million hours of viewing. We're #1 destination for progressives. You made all that happen. This is amazing, and thank you for those 2 years. What, I went past 2 minutes? Of course!
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you've never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
Y'all thought y'all got rid of me. No, I'm still here. But David did leave because he has things to do. He's further ahead than us over there in the East Coast there. But I did want to get back to a few of your comments because we got to get to you guys. We got to see what you guys were thinking as we went through these last stories, especially. So Mickey C, the silver hair dragon. Oh, I think we heard from him also as well. I need to do research first, quote unquote. Does she use firsthand news? This is talking about Nicki Minaj, of course, the story we just did. Secondhand? Nope. Third hand, friend of a friend is the extent of her research. Now, this is the thing. I think that's one of those things that happens a lot with folks. They go, I'm gonna do my research, and then they hear their cousin say something specifically. In this case, it was cousin to say something, or someone online, or a YouTube video, or any of those types of things that just don't have a direct connection to who it is that you're talking to, or where they got their information from, and vetting it before you take it and then say it to the next person. I hear all kinds of things from people. And sometimes I hear those things that are opposite to what I think about what's going on with the vaccine and what's going on with COVID. And once I hear it, I do take it in. I go, oh man, because I don't think I know everything. And once you go with the thought that you don't know everything, you can take it in, but after that, you gotta confirm it. And it'd be irresponsible once I hear something from someone to then 20 minutes later, tweet, so I heard this from this guy who walked by me and told me this. That's just the difference. I'm perfectly okay with you having this anecdotal story of someone's testicles that increased in size and who knows what happened. Find out first, that's all. I don't see why it's such a rush and be like, oh man, I heard this one thing. Look it up first. So one of the scientists that I follow now, that I read and watched some of the things that she was talking about, her approach to discovering if someone is for real or not, is look at their credentials, look at their background, see what they've done, if they've been peer reviewed, all these things, you have to have a backing, that's all, simple. Sorry, I went on a little bit of a stretch on that. Let's go to some super chats. First off, Forbeszilla, thank you very much. It's just a super chat. She doesn't have a lot to say. I'm fine with that. Brett Williams as well. Thank you very much for the super chat. Get your name out there. Army of One said, thanks, Jayar. Best substitute ever. I wonder who else is substituted. Sometimes I feel like the other people who've driven the car, it still smells new. So I'm not sure how many people really jumped in since Rashad let me drive it, but we'll find out later. I'm gonna look into those. Grumpy Cat said, RIP Norm Macdonald. So we did just hear from Jordan, producer here, that Norm Macdonald apparently has passed away from cancer. I'm not sure the exact form or kind of cancer, but sad news for friends and family of Norm Macdonald. I had no idea he was even diagnosed. That's, you hate hearing things like this all the time. So again, as tweeted here, rest in peace to Norm Macdonald. For our Twitch audience, John F. McDropout, lovely. I have the clap. Ooh, must be the vaccine. So I think we get the point. Anything that happens, particularly with maybe any parts of your issues with health, must be the vaccine that did it. Also, I have the clap. Maybe my wife's gonna leave me. Maybe you're not gonna get married. All these things. It's just a domino effect. It's a domino effect. Dragon Penny said, I am a David Shuster fan for life. Now, Dragon Penny, you did not elaborate on what is he did or said that has this standing you've got for life. Is it the Michigan stuff? Is it the helmet? Is it his just quirky sense of humor? Who knows? I guess we'll find out next time when he shows up. Deb Andrew, or Deb, I guess it's Deb Andrew, says go Michigan also as well. I think it's the Michigan connection. We got the Michiganders. I was up there, you guys. I don't know if you guys know this, but Michigan was actually my second choice after USC. But USC is in Los Angeles and Michigan is in Ann Arbor. I mean, come on, you kidding me? And Tarharka said, great job, Jayar. I thank you for that because as the producers there found out today after we did the meeting and everything, I'm a bit of a spaz when it comes to filling in and leading these because I want things to just flow and flow and flow and flow. And then what I do when I get here is I start to stop and hesitate and stop and hesitate and talk here and talk here because that's what I do. I like to interrupt myself as I did just there, but you guys do have more Rashad Richey just now coming up. Let's scroll up and see what we have. We have the indisputable debate that he does. He's gonna go on the bullpen, replay the bullpen today, you guys. His debate, which was in, I think back in August with Christian Watson, who's a conservative podcast host. They're gonna discuss critical race theory with Dr. Richey. And they argued about how he was a victim of critical race theory. Now, I want you to think about that again. A victim of critical race theory. I mean, not the history of what happened in the country. We're not gonna get into it. We're gonna let Dr. Rashad Richey talk to this guy about it. It's a replay of a bullpen session that he had. Hope you guys enjoy it. I wanna thank you again for inviting me in. I will leave the keys right here delicately until next time. Maybe I'll be back on a Tuesday to talk to the good doctor just as a co-host. It'll be fun. But until then, thank you guys again. We'll see you next time on Indisputable.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bullpen.
In the bullpen today, I have Mr. Christian Watson, spokesperson for Color Us United and host of the Pensive Politics podcast. Christian, good day. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Richie. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I don't want to presume what you know or believe about critical race theory, but we're going to talk about it, debate it here on the program. What are your thoughts about critical race theory and your alleged connection that it has to education in America, K through 12?
So critical race theory, just putting it very simply, because there are a lot of different definitions that a lot of people like throw out, but critical race theory, as I best understand it, is a movement of a collection of academics who work in an interdisciplinary fashion to interrogate the role that they believe white supremacy and oppression has had and still continues to have in American society. And so essentially it's based on a few key precepts. Number one, that white supremacy is a part of the definition of America's institutions. Number two, that the impacts of white supremacy, far from any sort of individual instance of white supremacy, are still impacting and hurting Black Americans today. And number three, you have to engage those impacts in a critical way, which means, as they would say, or at least as they said in the critical race theory, the key writings, you have to engage critically, you have to engage in a sort of activist way, especially in the classroom and abroad in political society as well. And so this is really being pushed in education, or at least many of these principles, I should probably say, are being pushed in education by the 1619 Project. Now, when many folks hear this, they're like, well, this is nonsense, it's fear mongering, but it's not. Look at what Nikole Hannah-Jones has said in the essays that are within the 1619 Project curriculum and in her own personal statements. She said that slavery is foundational to America, that the editor for New York Magazine actually said that he wants to reframe history through a Black narrative, which puts slavery at the sort of forefront and the emphasis of what America is about. I mean, there are plenty of other essays in the curriculum that kind of do indict America's moral character. So I think that critical race theory principles are most certainly being used in a way that I think is not really appropriate for the classroom.
So let me go back to your original definition and understanding of critical race theory, because you go to some degree and then you don't go to the rest. Critical race theory does not mandate that you become an activist. That's not part of the lexicon of the theory. The theory itself basically says that due to the origin of how we started as a country, we have these biases that are built into policies, institutions, statutes, even the Constitution. Remember, the Constitution said at one point we were 3/5 of a person. The Declaration of Independence said that Native Americans are savages in the language of the Declaration of Independence. And then there are current modern structures that exhibit this same racial dynamic, where the disparity is connected directly statistically to a race variable. And you have to deconstruct that model, you have to reverse engineer that model and figure out where in the policy is it getting it wrong. Now, when you talk about K through 12 education, brother, you are well aware that critical race theory is not taught in K through 12 education. You know that.
Well, as I said, no one's reading Delgado, no one's reading Crenshaw, but I'm saying that critical pedagogy is a method that is being endorsed, especially by the curriculum of the 1619 Project to teach certain concepts. I think that's a self-evident fact.
Okay, so let me correct you on something. It's pedagogy, and the pedagogy that's being taught, that's an educational style. That's a method of teaching. So a theory is not really pedagogy. It's your method of connection.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, so the theory itself is implemented. So pedagogy is simply the way that the theory is implemented in the classroom. So even though critical race theory itself.
So explain that to me. Explain, how do you make it critical race theory when it's not critical race theory that's being taught? How do you connect the two?
I think you're kind of moving the goalpost here, Dr. Richard, respectively, because I never claimed that critical race theory itself, Delgado, Stefanik, Mary Matsuda, Crenshaw, they were being taught to K through 12 people, because they're not. I'm saying that the methodology and the principles of critical race theory are being taught, at least in the 1619 Project and across America. And I think that's
you say that you were a victim of critical race theory.
I think so, yeah.
And when were you a victim of critical race theory?
So again, I was using critical race theory as a proxy for its methodology.
But that's not what you said. You said you were a victim. I read it, brother. I did the research on you. You said you were a victim of critical race theory.
And I was quite clear about what I meant. Yes, I was quite clear about what I meant. So for example,
when were you a victim?
I partook in collegiate debate. And collegiate debate, there's a few kinds of collegiate debate. There's policy debate, there's national parliamentary debate, and there's other kinds, there's British parliamentary debate. And in almost all of the debates, particularly in policy and in national parliamentary debate, a lot of people use critical race theory arguments. Not only that, but many of the debate judges themselves are not only sympathetic, but formally critical debaters. It's not like critical race theory is simply being used sparingly by people as a wide array of arguments. No, critical race theory actually informs the structure of collegiate debate, whether it's terms like critique or what have you. Crenshaw has been quoted several times, Derek Bell, and the idea of sort of Afro-pessimism, that's been quoted several times. Excuse me, Frank Wendelson, and the idea of Afro-pessimism, that's been quoted several times. So yeah, and because of those ideas that were dominant, I was not really accepted and allowed to be in collegiate debate by people. Well, I was allowed, but I wasn't really accepted by folks. And a lot of my arguments were considered to be offensive and ignoring lived experience being the core function of actually what critical race theorists believe. If you look at Words That Wound, Matsuda, Crenshaw, and Stefanik, and all of them say in their section where they define critical race theory that we use lived experience as a means of disrupting the narrative that ignores, black folks and their experiences. So yeah, I was kind of a victim.
Let me help you. First of all, brother, you are not a victim of critical race theory. Critical race theory is a theoretical and an advanced theoretical framework that poses a question and a framework for analysis. Nobody's a victim of that whatsoever. And you learned it in the right context. If you were engaged in critical debate in a collegiate atmosphere, that is the right atmosphere, that is the right societal construct in order to learn an advanced theoretical framework, no matter what that framework may be. But all theoretical frameworks pose a question and a concept for analysis. I know you're well aware of that. You were no victim, sir. Let me bring to your attention some elements in modern society that I would like you to answer without using critical race theory. Okay, let's do that.
Very well.
4 years of survey data shows that black students represent only 15% of total US students enrolled in public education. But they make up 35% of students suspended once, 44% of students suspended more than once, and 36% of students expelled. That's from the US Department of Education. They also found in their research that this disparity is not explained by more frequent or more serious misbehavior by other students, meaning their behavior was comparable to white students. However, their penalty was much more severe. Let me read you another one. And by the way, I like to always source my data. You can find that US Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights. The New York City police officers were surveyed based on their stops. This was a survey after the fact. So this is not a lived experience survey. This is an actual data analytical survey. The data analytical survey showed that New York City, 88% of police stops involve Black and Latinx people, while 10% involve white people. Of those stops, 70% were completely innocent. So the data doesn't even justify them targeting Black and brown individuals. Another one, and you can find that information, New York Civil Liberties Union, Stop and Frisk data. Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to experience a pregnancy-related death than white women, even at similar levels of income and education and health. You can find that data, the National Partnership of Women Families study. The next one, on average, Black men in the US receive sentences that are 19.1% longer than those of white men convicted of the very same crime. You mean to tell me that I get 20% more time if I'm a Black man convicted in America than my white counterparts and we are convicted of the same exact crime? There's another one. On average, in the US, Black individuals are twice as likely to be unemployed as white individuals with the same exact background as their white counterparts. That's another data stat. You can find that at the Poverty Action Lab. I'll give you one more. One study found that job resumes with traditionally white sounding names received 50% more callbacks than those with Black sounding names. And they did this over and over again. They submitted the same education, the same experience, changed the name from Abdul to John, and all of a sudden companies started calling them back. Sir, those are dynamics of systemic bias, implicit or hyper-aggressive racism that must be examined. Tell me, how do you back engineer that? How do you examine it without the use of critical race theory?
Well, first of all, so critical race theory, let's be clear about what it is, as we have been doing with this conversation. It is indeed a framework which would look at all of those things, and it wouldn't actually, what you're doing, Dr. Rich, you're actually kind of trying to interrogate a little bit. And words that wound, all of the critical race theorists, particularly Matsuda and Crenshaw and all of them who wrote that book, they're very clear that they actually presume that all racial disparities must have racist outcomes. And there is a conversation to be had about that, but it is not a conversation that can be scientifically approached if we are assuming that all racial disparities or all disparities, in any area must be racist because they are adjacent to racism. This is the flaw that I think Kendi makes out to be an anti-racist. But to answer a few of your examples, for example, the education thing where black kids are punished more at public school. Again, I think that if we look at something that is black adjacent and automatically say this is anti-black, we're endeavoring in a sort of an association fallacy.
Well, tell me, what do you think it is?
If you look at charter schools, for example, many charter schools, black Americans actually outperform their public school peers, whether it's in college readiness, whether it's in subject readiness, and also whether it's in conduct as well. But when you have people pushing charter schools and more broadly school choice in certain areas like Chicago, what happened in Chicago was the superintendent of some of the schools and the teachers unions actually went against it. You're trapping black youth into a certain environment. So you should probably, instead of just looking at race as the only factor, consider, okay, how does that particular school treat certain kinds of infractions, and how might that impact, what that individual is doing? How is that individual's home life? All I'm saying is that it's important in any given situation not to simply look at the surface, but to do what Plato said and inquire and interrogate the relationship between knowledge and opinion and try to get as close to knowledge as possible. Critical race theory does not do that because critical race theory, as they said in Words That Wound, presumes that certain things are true without investigating them. And in my opinion, going back to the classroom, that kind of mentality has no room in a system that is meant to educate people, to mold the man, mold the woman, as the ancients would think, in a way that is going to prepare them for life.
Brother, you said a whole lot without saying much at all. So let me help you here.
Which of my claims do you take issue with?
Well, the fact that you never really got to the core of how do you reverse engineer the obvious disparities that are connected to race that I just posed to you.
Well,
you cannot tell me.
Go ahead. Dr. Rishi, I must respectfully disagree, sir. I did. I told you explicitly that we have to look at these things through a multifaceted lens and not through a reductive, simplistic. I just gave you several examples as it related to the school thing. There are many different things that could account for the disparities in punishing, and in charter schools, in many charter schools, like those disparities just don't exist.
Just name a few, brother.
I mentioned family life. How does that particular school handle infractions? It does not have to be entirely linked to racist practices, but the problem is, Dr. Ritchie, critical race theory likes to see racism in terms of impact, not in terms of intent or value, or to the extent that intent or value mean anything. This is Kenny's definition.
Well, let me ask you
they must be correlated with impact.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that a New York City police officer or the New York City Police Department pulling over 88% of the individuals who are black and brown, a huge disparity in how they pull over people, and not even coming up with the result of more people being arrested, 70% are completely innocent of anything? Do you not think that is systemic? You think there's something else there?
Well, so I think two things can be true at once. You could have a systemic problem without the problem being necessarily racist.
But it doesn't mean it's not racist. But let me
Dr. Rich, you're kind of moving the goalposts.
No, brother, you say it doesn't necessarily mean that it's racist, which means you have left the door open for the fact that it could absolutely be racist.
Well, okay, well, perhaps, but we shouldn't jump to that conclusion. That's my point. The point is, because
when the data shows the disparity based on race, why would you not? And it's not jumping to a conclusion, it's interpreting the data. Why would you not say, listen, if 3 to 4 times black women who are pregnant experience a pregnancy-related death more so than white women with similar background, income, education, and health, why would you not say, listen, we need to make sure we take a closer look and how we're treating black women in this industry. Why would you not make that conclusion based on the data?
Well, again, I think our phrasing is very important. I think sometimes using the word we and how we are treating people kind of puts everyone on the hook. When if this is a racist problem, as you seem to believe it is, we should be looking for the actual people who are causing the problem. But back to the broader point, I do want to interrogate and investigate all of these issues, but I want to do so through a lens that is not simplistic and presumptive as critical race theory would have us do.
But I would love for you to present another one. I'm asking you, brother, present another lens. Listen, critical race theory says, okay, a whole lot of bad stuff as far as disparities that happen, it can be traced back to a racist or racial core. And we have to check those things inside of our policies. You would admit that we have policies that unfairly penalize individuals of color more so than other groups. Would you not agree that we have policies like that?
So there are what you're asking, are there disparities in data? Absolutely, there's a disparities in data, but we have to investigate the disparities. Emerson made it very clear. We have to investigate what goodness is. We have to see why what is. And I think just taking a very surface level prima facie look at the data and saying, hey, this is a racial disparity, ergo it must be
but
racist.
It is by fact.
Well, facts are important, sir, which is why, and I want to understand the facts.
So the fact is, let me just make sure we're clear. You do believe in the fact that there are racial disparities based on these institutions, right?
Well, there are racial disparities do exist in data sets 100%. I want to get to why they exist. Is it because of racism? That's what critical race theorists think. I think that's a simplistic explanation to a multivariate problem. Life is a complex phenomenon, Dr. Ritchie. As you would know, sir, you're a PhD. You had to go through a lot of things to get your PhD. So I think that reducing this very complex and multifaceted world and very complex and even more multifaceted human society, human interaction to one answer, because those answers have been emblazoned and sort of seen in the cultural atmosphere, is not the best thing to do. If I am wrong and these things end up being the cause of racism, actual racism, then yes, let's fight them, let's get rid of them. But I want to go back to something you said before.
Before you go there, and I will allow you to finish your thought. Critical race theory does not provide a singular answer as far as I apply critical race theory. I do understand that there are some instances where there's data, macro data, that cannot be codified in a racial dynamic. And we may not have access to that data. But what we do have, the access to the data we do have, shows clearly that an overwhelming truth is present. And the overwhelming truth, brother, is that these disparities break down with a racial significance. And yes, you could have meaning when we talk about 3 to 4 black women being 3 to 4 times more likely to die being pregnant than white women. Well, that breaks down to a racial issue. That's a racial disparity. That racial disparity has something at its core creating that disparity. You have to investigate it. You're saying that it may be something else, but I'm telling you, you got the data. At least start there is my point. If you're not willing to start with what the data has concluded, you will never get to unravel the other lenses that you're talking about. And I'm with you, brother. I get it. You're saying let's be multifaceted. Let's make sure we have various lenses in order to examine these things. And you do. You need it from an equity standpoint. You need it from a gender bias standpoint. You need it from all of that. Okay. Wait a minute. You don't believe gender bias exists?
Well, Dr. Ritchie, I didn't say that, sir.
But you don't believe gender bias exists?
No, I didn't say that, sir. Okay. So here's what I'm trying to say, sir. So I think you did something in the course of your response there. So you said that the disparity reflects a problem, a racial problem. But as far as I can see, the line of your reasoning doesn't satisfy how that problem is racist. We haven't gotten there yet. Yes, that's correct. A racial disparity does have a context within the context of race because it is being measured by race. So when we measured black women and the disparity between white women, that is something that is being measured by race. But that goes from being something a matter of, okay, Dr. Ritchie, so how is it not true? If we're measuring the disparity between black and white women in terms of pregnancy, and is that not being measured by race?
No, the study was not. So let me help you understand how the study
is
actually.
Race is a factor, though, of course, right?
Race, the disparity, is the outcome of the data. So let me bring you back to the study.
I know.
The study examined income, healthcare, as well as education. Those are non-racial elements. That's what the study examined. The study with the New York City Police Department, it only examined the number of arrests, the number of stops, and the number of citations. It did not study it from a racial context. US Black individuals are twice as likely to be unemployed than white was a measure, once again, of experience work-wise, education, and also age was put in that variable. And it showed that Blacks are less likely to be unemployed, more likely to be unemployed than their white counterparts. Now, none of those studies contextualized in the variable race. It contextualized everything else and said, but the outcome, the disparity, happens to have this amazingly unequal racial conclusion.
Okay, well, we can agree that race is indeed involved in understanding the disparity as a whole, right? We can agree on that premise. Okay, very good. All right, so when we go beyond that, though, you said a few moments ago, and we kind of have gone a lot of different ways this conversation. But you said a few moments ago that it is important to recognize the disparity exists, and we agree on that point. The disparity does exist, but it's also important to investigate the reason as to why the disparity exists, and we actually agree with that point. But when you said different lenses, you mentioned gender bias, race, equity, and Dr. Ritchie, respectively. I don't think that if an inspector goes into a house and just looks inside the house and never looks outside the house, that he's actually really inspecting the entirety of the house. So the house of critical race theory and critical, pedagogy and critical concepts include the idea of equity, include a sort of emphasis on gender bias. And I don't think you can actually interrogate and inquire into ideas when you're staying within a single ideological framework. It's anti-intellectual. All intellectuals need to go outside their framework and question themselves. Introspection and self-challenge are the basic precepts of how we acquire knowledge of the world, sir. So, respectively, I think all of those things you mentioned, equity, gender bias, they can be a part of a broader analysis, but the broader analysis must exist outside of a single umbrella, which is what I think only having those things you mentioned would put us under.
So let me push back a little bit on that. And by the way, I appreciate you being on the show.
I'm happy to be
there are multiple theories that coexist. Some of them actually overlap. Grounded theory, one of the theoretical constructs that I used for actually my second doctorate. I used grounded theory. That's not the only theory that I would subscribe to, right? Okay. To explain or analyze or compare data. And now you have to look at it from two data concepts. Qualitative comparison, which is your social comparison, and then quantitative comparison, which is your analytical research numbers heavy comparison. We're looking at this data through those comparative models. And when you look at the data through those comparative models, you're not starting with a racial core. You're ending with a race disparity conclusion, but you're not starting with a race dynamic. Now, here's what I hear you saying. I hear you telling me that it could be race. It's on the table. That could be one issue. But you're saying it could also be other issues as well. So here's what I propose to you, brother. Because I've read what you have placed out there on social media, and I think you're doing the conversation a disservice because you know that critical race theory should be included in the lexicon of theoretical frameworks or even practical analysis. It should be one of them. If you say on my show, that race could be involved.
Well, okay, so you said the lexicon of theoretical frameworks. That's, to me, is a composition of words that I'm not entirely sure addresses the core of my propositions. My proposition is that it shouldn't be in the classroom as fact. And that's actually the proposition that many of the bills.
Wait a minute, brother.
Well, actually,
I only got a minute. It's not in the, no, it's
the
not.
1619 project.
Sir, sir, you're talking about less than 1% of curriculum. I'm talking about the vast majority. Sir, less than 1% of curriculum was connected to the 1619 project. It is and by the way, it's a great project and it's a great curriculum. I stand by it, but it's less than 1%. Let's talk about the overwhelming percentage, 99 point whatever it is, that actually teaches a core educational curriculum, not the foundation of critical race theory. It's not taught. You guys keep coming back to that as if it's taught in K through 12 education, and it's not. I just don't understand why y'all keep making that argument.
Well, sir, again, I've demonstrated to you that the 1619 project it's using methodology which is directly linked to critical pedagogy, and I think that's a very bad thing because critical pedagogy does not take into account a wide variety of ideas and explanations. It presumes, and this people can source me, words that wound, Matsuda, Crenshaw, Delgado, they all say that they presume through their lived experience that all disparities in all areas, housing, education, are racist.
And the reason why they say that is because they, as scholars, have decided to utilize that as their comparative analysis. But brother, let me correct you. Let me correct you on one thing before I go, okay?
Yes, sir.
When you say the critical race theory is presented as fact, the very word, the very phraseology is theory. Critical race theory. Theory, brother.
Yes.
Theory. Which means by definition and design of the phrase cannot be fact. It is a theoretical framework to analyze and compare. That's what it is.
If I may.
Yes.
Sir, if I may.
You got 1 minute, go ahead. You got the last one.
If I may, there are plenty of theories that constitute our understanding of the world, which are held as fact. For example, gravitation is one of those theories. So yes, even though a theory itself is supposed to be very contingent and supposed to be very not necessarily certain, there are people who believe the precepts of a theory are true and will teach those precepts as fact. Just because the theory itself may not have the word fact built into it does not mean people cannot in the material world go through and manifest the ideas of the theory as facts. So let's just be very clear with our words here.
All right, brother. I was very clear with the fact that critical race theory, by definition of the phrase, cannot be taught as fact, but as a theoretical framework.
I disagree.
And scholars have been doing that for many years. And let me say big ups to Dr. Chika Kua, my dissertation chair at Clark Atlanta University, who taught me a lot about CRT. All right, thank you, brother. I appreciate you being on the program.
Thank you, Dr. Rich. Appreciate it. Thank you.